Hello, BookTube. Well, it's Wednesday, and that would ordinarily be Epic Comic Book Wednesday, where Michael K. Vaughan and I team up to talk about some comic book that he loves and that I probably don't. But he's not able to do Epic Comic Book Wednesday this week, and I didn't want a void to open up. So I thought we'd just talk about random comic books. I would take a stroll through the long cardboard white boxes that all comic book fans have. Uh, I have far fewer of those long boxes than I ever have in the past. It's kind of amazing. The uh, for the longest time, I had a steamer trunk, so not a footlocker. I have my beloved footlocker that's been all over the world with me, and that is currently in here at Hyde Cottage and in active use. It's not. I don't use it to travel anymore, but I use it for my all-purpose work desk. It's right next to the fainting couch. But the big steamer's chest is gone. It was a big ornate thing. I didn't usually use it for travel. And so I gradually filled it with comic books. I would go and get comic books, whether it was 10 issues that week at the dry goods store, or then at the dedicated comic shop, or whether I happened to go to a flea market or a thrift shop or a barn of some kind, and I would find someone selling just a box of old comic books for $5. Take the whole thing, get it away from me. I would always do that, always. And this is going to horrify you comic book purists, but when I was done with those things, I would lift the lid of the steamer trunk. I don't know if any of you know what I'm talking about, but you lifted the lid, and then there was a cardboard inset. There was a wooden inset at the top that rested on shelves, on little shelving right 6 inches off the top of the thing as a tray that you could put immediate things in. Then you lift up that tray. It had holes on the sides. You lift up that tray and you've got the whole depth of the steamer chest. And I used to lift off that top part and just chuck the comic books in. I didn't stack them neatly or anything like that. I just chucked them inside. And periodically I would just open that thing and go rummaging around. It wasn't good for the comics, but I wasn't thinking of it in archival terms at all. That is long gone, and before it went, I transferred its contents to long boxes and tried to organize them a little. Didn't really work. As I'm learning this week, I'm not exactly aces at organization. But it was still lots and lots of fun. I haven't actually prowled through long boxes in quite some time. Once upon a time, there was a comic shop here in Boston, other side of town, just on the borders of being out of town, it was a normal comic shop, but it had a basement that was just lined with long boxes of back issues for $1 a piece. I used to go there every once in a while. The staff was insufferable, of course, but I used to go there every once in a while and just let my fingers do the walking through those boxes, see what I could find. But that shop, I'm sure, is no longer in business. There's, of course, Million Year Picnic across the river in Cambridge. They're still very much in business, and they have not long boxes, but racks of comics. But they know what they're selling. They're not selling anything for $1 a piece. If you encounter an old issue while you're paging through back issues in those bins, you'll pay the going price for it. You won't get it for $1. And then there was Vermont. There was a Antiques Mart that Mark Richardson and I went to up in Vermont, that up tucked in one corner on one floor had a whole corner full of comic books, of back issue comic books for $1 a piece. I hauled a number of those on this channel back when the Bean and I were regularly going up to Vermont. She really liked that Antique Mart because at any moment you could round a corner and she could find someone to scream at, to pet her, to fuss over her. She would be her little paws up in the air saying, "Come to me, kiss me and pet me, I'm so adorable." But I haven't done anything like that since. All I do now, the only version of it I have now, are the 3 long boxes that I have. 3 or 4 long boxes that I have, that I occasionally go through. And I went through those today so that we could talk about random comic books, probably all of which I've talked about before, but why not? Why not do a little comic book talking on Wednesday, which is technically New Release Comic Book Day? That's a bit of a barren weekly appointment for me anymore. It used to be a highlight of my week, whether it was Wednesday or Thursday or Friday, whenever the day was that the industry would release that week's new releases of superhero comic books. That used to be a time of joy for me when I was in the country. Not anymore. Not anymore. Comic books don't want me as a fan. Or anybody like me. Anybody who looks like me, anybody that's my age, anybody that's ever read comics the way I have, they don't want me. And that's okay. You make it clear to me that you don't want my money, you won't get my money. I'm not a masochist. I'm not going to pay you anyway. But I have tons of older issues, and there is one new issue that I want to start with. Something that I got on New Comic Book Day last week. A new release last week. This week had a couple of new releases that vaguely interest me, but my new comic shop is not on my route. It's just not. It wouldn't be today anyway, because it's gross and rainy today. So I waited years and years and years of traveling when you're out in the wilderness, you don't have any choice. You have to just push through weather like this. And when I was working in retail for 25 years, you also don't have any choice. So if you're working in retail and it's 7:30 in the morning and a cold rain is slapping against the window panes, it doesn't matter. You've got to get up. You've got to get the dogs up. You've got to get them out. You've got to get them fed and cared for. You've got to run into the brick wall of the impossibility of letting them know that you will be back in 10 hours, that the whole of their day will be spent without you. And then you've got to go out into this weather. And every single time that I ever did that, I told myself, if there ever comes a time when you don't have to do that, don't do it. So I don't do it. I wouldn't have gone today anyway. There were a couple of things that maybe would be of interest, but my shop is not on my route, and unfortunately, Mark Richardson's comic shop is not on his route either, or I'd be happy to parasitize him, but no, it's not convenient for him to get it and send it to me. But I did get a new issue last week, this thing, Batman Dark Age #1. The draw here, no pun intended, is the artwork by Mark Allred. And Allred's artwork is an acquired taste. It's stiff. Let me show you a perfect example. This is what passes for an action panel for him. It's stiff and stylized. I didn't originally like his artwork at all, and then I fell in love with it during a run that he did on the Fantastic Four. I realized, okay, I do really like this stuff. It's not my preferred cup of tea, but I do really like it, and I buy comics for the artwork, so that's why I got this. The writing here is by Mark Russell, but not my Mark Russell, who will not be known to anybody listening to me. There was once upon a time an absolutely darling, priceless political comedian called Mark Russell. I don't know if there are any political comedians now. I would tend to doubt it. It's literally life or death. Now, politics in America is literally life or death. It's not a laughing matter at all. But once upon a time, forever and ever, it's not him. It's not him. I would pay good money to see a Batman comic written by that Mark Russell, but this is another Mark Russell. And unfortunately, I paid good money to read a comic book by him. What was this? It's probably sinfully expensive. Does it not even have the price on the cover? Oh my God, it doesn't even have the price on the cover. Okay, it's tucked away in fine print on the back. It's $6. This is worth 6 cents, 60 cents maybe. Not $6. It's long. It doesn't have any ads, so it's or very few ads. It's lots and lots of pages of Mike Allred artwork. I guess it has that going for it. It's a what-if story, an imaginary story, a retelling Batman's origin story. And thanks to a million movies and the fact that this character has moved into the zeitgeist, you know his origin story. You can say it in outline whether you know the comic books or not. That a little boy named Bruce Wayne sees his parents murdered in front of him in Gotham City and vows to fight crime. He vows to grow up and fight crime. And he spends the intervening years making himself into the world's greatest detective, the world's greatest athlete. He inherits millions, later updated to billions, as the head of his family's fortune. He has a gigantic mansion outside of Gotham. He has a butler named Alfred who raised him as a child. And from that perch, he fights crime. He decides, he has no idea what he wants to do, and then a bat enters his study. And he says, I shall become a bat. The criminals are a cowardly, superstitious lot. He'll strike fear into their hearts by being an avenger of the night, by being Batman. In the rudiments, that is the storyline. So he is a character who is driven by both justice and a kind of unfocused, long simmering revenge. And I guess there's a little sigil at the bottom there. You can't really make it out, but it's celebrating 85 years of Batman. And I guess the goal here for this particular issue is how about if we celebrate Batman by totally changing him, which is not exactly what you want to do if a character is successful. This is the origin story. This is a young Bruce Wayne, a young boy Bruce Wayne. There he is in Superman colors on the back in the Batcave. And you open it and you know what you expect. His parents are, Thomas and Martha Wayne are getting ready for a night on the town in Gotham. They're getting ready to go to the movies. They're getting ready to go out to an area that will later become known as Crime Alley. It, of course, it falls on hard times, but it's not known as that when they're there. And you momentarily know what to expect, which is that Bruce Wayne will go with them. They will be shot in front of him, and we will get a Mark Russell all-red version of the origin of Batman. But instead, they leave Bruce Wayne at home. They leave little Brucey at home with Alfred the butler, and they get killed at the movies without him. This is the very first change here, is that young Bruce Wayne does not see his parents murdered. He just hears about it, I guess, from Alfred or whatever. And he becomes a juvenile delinquent. He's got all the money in the world. When he reaches his majority, he will be in charge of his family's company. So he keeps getting into trouble, first at grade school, then at boarding school, then as a young man. And he keeps fast-talking his way out of it. He's an arrogant piece of crap, so he has a cadre of family lawyers. And he is bored. They're all there. They're going to get him out of any kind of trouble because they've got all the money in the world, and he is a minor. And you keep expecting, you keep waiting. I kept waiting. Okay, all right. Well, it's not Batman if you've already taken away a key detail here, which is that Bruce Wayne is not traumatized, except in the distant sense of losing his parents. But he's not directly traumatized by seeing crime take their lives. Okay, you've already changed that, and now you've made him. We don't know anything about Bruce Wayne in these years. None of it is canonical. The Batman story starts when he decides to become Batman as an adult. But okay, fine. It's fruitful area then to dig in. And so I was reading and I was thinking, okay, well, you've taken away a linchpin of Batman, and now you're taking away another, because not only has he not seen his parents murdered, but Alfred is doing a poor job of raising him. He's a jerk. So I guess what you're going to show me now is him learning the error of his ways, that maybe he was a jerk to start with, and then he will become a worthwhile person, a hero. I almost hesitate to say the word in the 21st century. It's a dirty word now, but maybe he will become heroic. A very Marvel Comics idea. In DC, the heroes are born. They don't become that way. They are that way. But I'm willing to accept it. But no, that doesn't happen. He just keeps on being a jerk. Totally self-centered, caustic, stupid, snot-nosed little jerk. Alfred at one point wonders if maybe he's not just, this is maybe beyond him. Maybe he's just not cut out to raise a young boy. At that point, I was nodding vigorously, saying, yeah, you're right. If this is the result, then you're not cut out to raise a little boy. By the time Bruce is older, in his early teens, I guess, it's tough to tell, because Allred at this point is drawing everyone as basically a young adult. The way he signifies that you're not teenagers if he gives you a fake-looking mustache. He encounters, during one of his times in the police station, he encounters a young woman who's also on charge. She's dressed all in black. She was the thief. She is Selina Kyle. She is Catwoman. At another point, he, on a whim, buys a comedy club, and the lead act, a doughy-looking young man, a little bit older than he has a nihilistic set that makes people uncomfortable and makes them maybe wonder if they should laugh or not. Obviously, the Joker. And at one point in the climax of the book, when he is in trouble yet again, the cops show up, and he starts to do his rich, spoiled kid patter about, this, I've got a solution to this, nothing's going to come of this, you can't possibly do this. And one cop vigorously arrests him, vigorously handcuffs him, and puts him in the system. And that cop is obviously Jim Gordon, because I guess in Mark Russell's Gotham, There are 5 people. And that's how it ends. That's how this is the first installment. I don't know how long this thing's going to go on. Of Bruce Wayne in prison. He has lost control of his family company, and he is in prison for 10 years. So this book, I guess, answers the question of Batman. What if he were completely different? Not anything like Batman at all. Well, okay, all right. I don't know that anyone was asking that question. I certainly wasn't. Okay, fine, great. So I wouldn't be interested in him. I don't know anyone else that would be. So I guess maybe not. The next issue of this would be of interest for Mike Allred collectors. I know he has them. He's big at art shows. I'm sure that there are people who will buy this just because it's Batman. This is I think meant to be a kind of companion piece to the Superman run that he did just a couple of years ago. That was also weird, but didn't take these many liberties right out of the starting gate. These many liberties. I don't want to get all meta here, but I get the impression. That the main thing this thing is doing is deconstructing not a hero, but the idea of heroes, which is what comic books do now. Come on, kids. Don't you want to spend your allowance money on this kind of nihilistic garbage? That's what comic books do now. They deconstruct the idea of a hero, unless you're a woman, unless the character is a woman, in which case, fine. Then, there's nothing wrong, and there's nothing that can be wrong, and there's no conflict. No one's ever going to punch you, for Pete's sake. If Dr. Doom were to punch Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, she'd cancel him on Twitter. So there's not going to be any effort. But if you're a man, well then, yeah, there are no heroes. And we must deconstruct the very idea of it. Batman, as a character concept, makes that an intriguing thing to do, but only if you're going to bring any brains to it. If you're just going to do this, then it's not worth it. So that was one thing that was new. I'm slowly, periodically I have to reteach myself the lesson that don't get new comics. Just don't do it. Don't do it. It's not worth it. It's not worth even 10 steps. I say my comic shop is out of my way, but they could be right next to the fry shop, 10 steps away. And I shouldn't go. I shouldn't do it. Back issues, sure. And I have back issues to show you to get the taste of Batman Dark Age out of our minds. Like, for instance, this first one is from the 1970s, and you're not going to believe it. I know I've shown it on this channel before. Nobody ever believes that I like it because it's got artwork by Herb Trimpe, who I often make fun of as perhaps the worst comic book artist ever to put pen to easel. This is Marvel 2-in-1 number 9. Which I bought on the comic shops for $25 because of the Gil Kane cover. That is a beautiful Gil Kane cover. That cover basically tells you the story. That bald guy in the background holding little marionettes of the Thing and Thor is the Puppet Master, a Fantastic Four villain who uses irradiated clay to create figurines of people who are then fall under his control. But that is a beautiful Gil Kane cover. That is just amazing. And this is... Unfortunately, this is Gil Kane artwork. It's just awful. It's just really awful. Or not Gil Kane artwork on the inside, I wish. No, this is Herb Trimpe artwork on the inside. And the story is very simple. What if the Mad Thinker made a little clay marionette out of Thor and took him over? It absolutely should not be possible. Thor is an alien being. He's a god. It should not be possible. And this issue... Who's this written from? Marv Wolfman? Oh, Chris Claremont wrote the script from a plot by Steve Gerber. Okay. Well, the plot briefly hints that maybe it works on Thor because he's distracted. That's not how radiation works. But either way, it does work. Temporarily, it does work. And Thor is temporarily at the bidding of the Puppet Master. I don't know if you're going to be able to tell from these pages, but... Herb Trimpe is not just getting a little aid here from his inker. He's also getting a little aid from John Romita Sr. You I don't miss it when John Romita Sr. takes a hand. But you can see he takes over Thor and tells him, destroy the Fantastic Four, his lifelong enemies. The Fantastic Four, who live in the Baxter Building, just across Manhattan. Thor can easily detour there. And what you get in the next 2 pages, I remember reading. When did this come out? What year was this? 1975. Yeah, a year before the bicentennial. I remember reading this, and I was reading along. You get all this tedious Herb Trimpe artwork at the beginning of the puppet master getting his idea, his great idea. Why he didn't have this idea to start with, I don't know. And I remember thinking, okay, all right, so Thor is taken over by the puppet master and attacks the Baxter building with the Fantastic Four inside. He catches them completely by surprise. I remember when I was reading this 50 years ago, I was thinking, well, if that's true, he would mop the floor with them. He'd mop the floor with them anyway. But if they don't have any preparation at all, then the fight wouldn't last 5 seconds. And, amazingly, it doesn't last 5 seconds, which really, really surprised me. Thor is able to immediately dispatch everyone. Just the whole of the first 3 of the Fantastic Four. He defeats Mr. Fantastic. He defeats the Human Torch. At this period, he had that cool red costume easily. And he is about to pound his way through Sue Storm's force field, which can't take much more punishment from him, when suddenly he comes to his senses and realizes what he's done. But by then it's too late, because the minute he transforms back, he transforms into Donald Blake, his lame in every sense of the word, as Michael K. Vaughan says, alter ego. But when he turns back into Thor, well, he's back under the puppet master's control. And what is left to him is to fight the Thing, the most powerful member of the Fantastic Four. And they duke it out in panels that only Herb Trimpe could make boring. The Thing versus Thor. That doesn't happen all that often. And finally we get to this panel up here. And the Thing has something very interesting. He thinks something very interesting. I don't get it. Thor's the god of thunder. He could take me easy, but I'm facing him down, no sweat, like he really didn't want to fight me. That's nice to know. That's nice to hear. That is absolutely true. The Thing would have no chance against Thor. The Fantastic Four would have no chance against him if they're caught unaware. Of course, my yardstick here, I'm a little bit of an FF fan here. I will insert my yardstick just a bit. If the Fantastic Four does have warning, then they can easily beat Thor, or anybody else. They are unbeatable together. But if they don't have any warning, then Thor should do exactly what happens here. Then it turns out not being all that interesting. I didn't realize the 2 really good writers were involved in this. How they managed to turn out a turd like this, I don't know. What do we got here? Oh, right. Okay, this is also from the 70s. Yes. 1972. This just came up on this channel. This is the first issue of Tarzan of the Apes by Joe Kubert. From when I was buying these on the shelf, I just recently found a Dark Horse. Look at that, just beautiful Joe Kubert artwork. Oh my, how lovely! Just how lovely. Let's see here. Look at that. Those are the Claytons being stranded on the coast of Africa. They have nothing. They don't know what's going to happen. They're frightened by every sound in the jungle, and eventually, of course, they're doomed because the apes come for them. Look at that. Kubert knows that he doesn't need to put anything in here in terms of dialogue, so he doesn't. He just doesn't do it. And they raise a naked little baby. They raise a naked little boy on their own who becomes Tarzan. I bought this issue. This issue on the stands had something that that Dark Horse volume doesn't have, which is Murray Anderson's John Carter of Mars. As a backup feature, we get the origin story of John Carter of Mars going to Mars. I bought this when it came out in the early 70s. I was a big Tarzan fan, a big John Carter of Mars fan. I was overjoyed that it was getting the big treatment here. I've now seen this happen a few times. It's a little bit dating. I've seen this companies do this big fanfare. Always you launch Tarzan with John Carter, because John Carter is, I think, Edgar Rice Burroughs' coolest creation. But Tarzan is like Batman I mentioned earlier. He's entered the zeitgeist. Everybody knows Tarzan, which isn't given to many writers to create. John Carter never did that. But Tarzan did. So this gave us both, and I was happy to see it big and blazoned. The idea of getting lots and lots of Tarzan issues. Of course, when I bought this, I had no idea how great this run would be. I had no idea how great Joe Kubert's Tarzan would be. It confused me at first. I remember one of my longstanding reactions to this issue was how lean his Tarzan is. His Tarzan is almost skinny, which is not usual. I had not seen that in previous in comic strip Tarzans. I hadn't seen that, but this ran forever and ever, and then DC eventually lost the franchise, and then decades later, Marvel got the franchise, and they came out with Tarzan #1 and John Carter of Mars #1. That lasted forever and ever, and then they moved on. It was nice. It was nice to revisit this, although it's you can see it's a little bit ragged. I'm glad I have that paperback volume. That paperback volume is up there. Yes, there it is. Up there. John Carter from Marvel and, John Carter from Dark Horse, but it's reprinting the Marvel years, and Tarzan, the Joe Kubert years. What have we got next here? Oh, goodness. Okay, all right. Well, we're going backwards in time. I might have shown all these things on this channel before. This is from the mid-1960s. So, undergraduate days. This is Green Lantern. Another Gil Kane cover. This is from a decade earlier, but it's still easy to spot his work. And fans of this issue, I saw this on the spinner rack and was stunned because it was 2 Green Lanterns. That's the Alan Scott Green Lantern and the Hal Jordan Green Lantern. Alan Scott was the World War II Green Lantern, had a New York's cabbie sidekick. He had a ring that was magical and not scientific. The Guardians of Oa were not part of it. And seeing the Guardians of Oa on the cover immediately made me think, oh, well, okay, so are we going to get some sort of, I didn't know the word at the time, but retconning? Is someone going to try to smooth out the continuity between these 2 characters? Because Hal Jordan is very different from Alan Scott. Not only in the fact that Hal Jordan has the single gayest superhero comic costume ever created by any artist for anyone ever, but also his ring is super science. It's not magical. And this issue has just great Gil Kane artwork all throughout. I have no idea what kind of archival volume I would have to go to get this. I don't typically like Green Lantern. I wasn't going to miss a feast like this of having the 2 continuities collide, but I wasn't much drawn to the character unless it was for the Gil Kane artwork, because I buy comics for the artwork. But I have no idea. I'm sure this thing has been reprinted, but I have no idea where. I wouldn't want a whole library of Green Lantern. I'm sure that Michael K. Vaughan has a whole library of Green Lantern, but I wouldn't want a whole library of Green Lantern just to get this one issue. What is next here? We go back to the 70s, and this is another perfect example of buying something for the artwork. This is Robert E. Howard, but this isn't Conan, and it isn't Cull. It's his lame hero, Solomon Kane. This is Marvel Premiere, which was a showcase title. It wasn't meant to be any kind of regular ongoing continuity. It was just a showcase title for various one-shots or two-shots. And this was the Mark of Cain is what it's called, but it is Solomon Kane. It's Robert E. Howard's Puritan hero. And I would probably have passed on it because I'm just not all that interested in Solomon Kane. And even I might have been tempted because it's written by Roy Thomas, who Michael K. Vaughan isn't. Let's usher him out of the room while I quietly say that Roy Thomas, I think, is a much better writer of Robert E. Howard than Robert E. Howard was. But that still would have been enough. But the artwork here is by Howard Chaykin, and that is enough. That is definitely enough for me because Howard Chaykin is fantastic. He's just incredible. Even in these early days, he's just incredible. A titan of the industry. So I got it for that. And I have no idea where I would find it. Is there a Dark Horse or even a DC or a Marvel collection of reprints of Solomon Kane that has this story? Or is Marvel Premiere somehow off the radar? No idea at all. None whatsoever. Then another one-shot title that Marvel had forever and ever was something called What If? A monthly, I think it went monthly. A comic called What If, where a different creator and different writer, a different artist would come on to tell an alternate history story of some kind or other, some turning point in the Marvel continuity. What If stories could be really, really good. Most of them weren't. Most of them are really, really bad. So I paid attention to them. And kept the ones that were really good. And this one was terrific. This is written by Peter Gillis. It's got artwork by Ron Frenz, and this came out in well, it's not. I'm not seeing it quickly, but this would have been in the 1980s, and this is what they all had different titles. What If was the name of the series. What if the Invisible Girl had died? And that is Annihilus, a creature of the negative zone on the cover there. And there was a dicey moment in Fantastic Four history where the Invisible Girl seemed like she was going to die, and she didn't. But in this issue, she does. Sue's dead. The whole world learns about it. And gradually, look at this great panel work by Ron Frenz. Gradually, the whole world comes to her funeral service. And we get different people speaking. And it's very, very static. It shouldn't work, but it really, really does. We get Johnny Storm, who breaks down. And the Thing has to usher him away. The Thing also speaks. And then Reed Richards gets up to talk at her funeral. And there's no movement, no variation, no emotion whatsoever. And you can see Prince Namor the Submariner, who loved Sue Richards in his own way, is in the audience, and he notices right away that something is seriously wrong here. Tries to talk to the Thing about it. The Thing basically tells him, everybody grieves in their own way. But Reed Richards is grieving in an epic way. This has torn his life apart. Look at this panel work. My life is over. Just incredible. And he makes a decision which in the 1980s was extremely shocking, even for What If. It's not shocking now. Now characters do it on page 2. They do it if their cafe latte frap is late. Reed Richards decides to kill Annihilus. And this story goes on from there. It's just terrific. Well worth rereading. And again, I don't know the archival treatment. Probably this exists. I know the What If volumes have been collected somehow. I don't know if there's a big Michael K. Vaughan $120 hardcover omnibus. There could be. Some of those early issues, inside the first 20 issues, I'd say probably 6, maybe 8, are really, really good. This is one of the really, really good ones. This is issue number 42, so that would work. This was one of the really, really good ones. There are a couple in the very first 5 issues of What If that are absolutely terrific. And then, of course, there's my favorite one of all, which is What If Conan the Barbarian came to the present day. I've shown you that comic on this channel before. It's absolutely wonderful. One of the best things Roy Thomas ever wrote. Yeah, okay. Well, we can go from the heights to the depths. This is going to be the 80s. Yeah, this is John Byrne. In the wake of one of DC's spasms of continuity cleaning, the Crisis on Infinite Earths, all of their vast, rich tapestry of character backstory was wiped out and basically handed over to a bunch of Pabst Blue Ribbon swilling morons who were told, do what you want with these treasured items. You can't make them gay, can't change their race or their sex, but you can do anything else that you want to. Sales aren't good enough, and these things are for funny. They're for funny books anyway. Nobody cares about them, so you can change them all you like. And Superman was handed over to fan favorite artist and writer John Byrne, who proceeded to marvelize him in every way imaginable. It made him weaker, gave him all sorts of angst, made his backstory largely an illusion, ransacked all the most important details about Superman and just dumped them out the window, made his supporting cast into a collection of Peter Parker poltroons, and made his character morally relativistic, which is not the case with DC. DC characters do not understand moral relativism. They shouldn't. DC characters are gods trying to be human, not humans trying to be gods. And if you import moral relativism to Superman, well, what will you have him do? You will have him kill somebody. You will have him kill his enemies. And that's what happens in this issue. My jaw was open the whole time I was reading this back in the 80s. I was thinking, it's great John Byrne artwork, but all I could think was, you're giving me a Superman who is killing his opponents, cold-bloodedly killing his opponents. That was it. It wasn't a trick story. Superman wasn't any kind of mind control. They weren't fake. They weren't robots. No, he just commits homicide. I don't know if this particular storyline is part of Superman's backstory now. DC has been through a number of different continuity cleaning events since then, and no one has ever come along, and no one's going to now because the company is lost, but someone should come along and say, we're going to do another Crisis-style event. We're going to bill it as major. We're going to get the best people we can still find to write and draw it. And what we're going to do is erase all the dumb decisions that we've made in the last 40 years. We're going to wholesale erase them. No one's ever going to refer to them again. We're going to make a company rule. If you twist or bend or try to get around any of these 50 directives about these 100 characters, you are fired. Don't do it. Come up with stories to tell. You're a writer. Come up with stories to tell. If DC ever did that, this would be one of the first things to go. Superman does not kill his opponents. Our next one is a reprint from ages past. I want to say the 1960s. Well, the reprint is from 2010. But you might not tell me. 1963. This is Magnus Robot Fighter, with great artwork by Russ Manning. I once had a big collection of all of Russ Manning's Magnus Robot Fighter. I wish I still did. God knows how collectible it is now. This is terrific B-grade, schlock science fiction about a far, far future Earth in which robots are ubiquitous, and some of them go bad. And this guy named Magnus has been trained since infancy to fight robots. They should not be beatable, but Magnus can beat them. He has been trained physically to defeat them. He's a fascinating character. He should be a psychopath. But instead, I wish I had other issues of Magnus Robot Fighter, because these are terrific to reread. And who was this? Somebody, Dark Horse, reprinted this for $1? Yes, for $1. Once, back in 2010, I gobbled it up, of course. And it was after this that I found a big volume of Magnus Robot Fighter, and for some reason it's not here. I don't have you to blame, because I didn't meet you until years later. I didn't mail it to one of you. I sent it to somebody. Speaking of Crisis on Infinite Earths, we have this weird thing. This was DC Legacies, DC Universe Legacies, number 5 and number 6, which I knew right away as soon as I looked at the covers, dealt with Crisis on Infinite Earths, because that's what it was. That's what it looked like. And the first issue has George Perez artwork about the superhero universe leading up to Crisis on Infinite Earths. The characters experience it themselves. They experience what it was like when the sky turned red. And all the heroes come out to fight this problem. There's a great panel here where these two cops, who are our narrative focus, they look up in the sky, and the sky is thick with costumes. That's just awesome. We get this great George Perez artwork of them trying to save as many people as possible from this oncoming wave of destruction. And this issue has a backup feature with Walt Simonson drawing Space Cabbie, I think. Adam Strange. But Space Cabbie is in there. This is Walt Simonson drawing Adam Strange. That's pretty big in terms of a backup feature. And then there was the second issue of this, issue number 6, still continuing with Crisis retelling. Only here, the front of the book artwork is Jerry Ordway, the great Jerry Ordway, doing artwork, the same thing, just taking us through Crisis and its aftermath. And the backup feature in this issue is Keith Giffen drawing the Legion of Superheroes. What on earth? What on earth? How incredible. And I also like that when you put these two covers together, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this here. When you put these two covers together, you get the whole poster of our heroes fighting during Crisis. That is really great. That George Perez drew this giant poster and they made it into one big cover. That's just terrific. And we can end as we began with Batman. We can end in the 1970s. This has got to be the 1970s. Yes, this is the 1970s. I mentioned this before. DC Comics used to occasionally, during a year's run of one title, they would make one issue or 2 issues, 3 issues really big, 100-page giant for 60 cents. I can still hear me say to Ma, 60 cents for a funny book. But it was worth it. 50 cents, 60 cents, it was worth it for how much you got. And you got a square binding, too. At a time when that was unheard of, keep in mind. I'm getting a square-bound comic was so big it needs a square binding, at a time when it never crossed my mind that I would have comics as books, in book form. I never thought that would happen. This is great because it has the opening story of these was always new, and this is a Batman story drawn by Neil Adams, which just doesn't get much better than that. It really doesn't get much better than that. Look at just he does an incredible Batman. He didn't do much. Well, he did a little too much actually, because he came back with a Batman series that I do not understand at all. I don't think anyone does. He came back decades later with it. But when he did this original stuff, and you see, this is what these 100 pages did. They gave you an original story, and then a bunch of classic reprints for your 50 cents. It was well worth it to do. I got all of these things once upon a time. And there you go. That is a random tour through my comic book long boxes in Michael K. Vaughan's absence. And we're starting and finishing with Batman. Completely different approaches to the character of Batman. So that's your comic book infusion for today. You comic book fans wouldn't want to be without it. But I'll wrap this up for now, and I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.